Hi, my name's Arika, and I'm a publicist in Boston, and I recently had the chance to go back and spend the month of August, commercial fishing with my father on his fishing boat in Prince William Sound, Alaska. And we were commercial fishing for salmon for a month straight, and we were on the boat for about 3 weeks straight without getting off. And it was one of the most beautiful, amazing experiences I've ever had. The wildlife and just being outdoors was phenomenal. It was definitely the hardest physically and mentally challenge that I've ever done in my life. Okay, so a lot of people ask me what a typical day is, and typically we would get up at about 4:30, 5 a.m. and the opener would start at 6, and so we'd start fishing at 6. And we would make a series of sets, and a set is letting basically the net out and catching the fish and bringing it back in. So we would do about 10 up to 14 of those a day, and the way I describe it is, imagine the hardest aerobics class you've ever taken in the gym in your life for an hour, and do that, and then feel like you want to die, and then do it 14 times again. So it was really intense. So the process of a set is letting the net out in the water, doing a variety of things. So there's the boat that we're on, and there's a skiff that tows the other end of the net. And then we're manipulating the boat, we're plunging the fish physically with a big long pole into the net to keep them in the net, where it would kind of simulate, I guess, what a seal would do. So it would scare the fish down into the net if they tried to swim out, and you'd go down in the water and create bubbles so the fish would stay in. And bring it in, and then we bring the bag of fish on board in the hold, which is refrigerated with salt water. And then using hydraulics, the net is brought up and the purse string at the bottom is closed up to keep the fish in. And then it's reeled onto the boat. And then there's 2 people on the back deck who kind of manipulate the net and bring it in, and it's really heavy, and there's lead in the line, and you have to flip the corks and your arms feel like they're gonna fall off. And then we had to go to the tender to deliver our fish, which was kind of our source of anything we needed from the outside world. So if we had mail, if we needed groceries, if we needed fuel, water, we would get that from the tender. So we'd have to go deliver the fish to the tender, usually every day. And that took about another hour or so, depending on how many fish we had on board. And delivering, it was like one big giant vacuum where they would put it in the hold and suck the fish out. But we had to get in there with shovels and push the fish out, and it smelled terrible. And sometimes when the sets are so big, we wouldn't be able to bring them on board, so we would call the tender, and they would come over and pump the fish directly out of our net, still in the water. So we'd usually finish up about 9, 10 p.m. and cook an awesome dinner and hang out for about another hour and go to sleep and do it all over again. And we did that for 21 days straight. We never got off the boat once, except for we put a hole in our net once where we had to go to shore and mend it. But that was the only time we ever got off the boat. So my mom used to be a fisherman, and she gave me a lot of tips before I went. And she, said, wear a baseball cap and wear sunglasses so you don't get jellyfish in your eye. And I was like, no, you're kidding, you're exaggerating, no jellyfish. But it's true, jellyfish, because you're under the net and you're bringing it on. I had all over, first day, in my eye, on my face, stinging all over. I had blisters on my nose and my ears from jellyfish. Because they just pour down on top of you. So definitely got some jellyfish in my eye, all over my face, and you just get kind of numb and you don't even feel it towards the end. I learned more about fishing. It's not just fishing and, physical labor. I learned from my dad, being the skipper of the boat and the captain, that it has a lot more to do with, finding, strategizing where they are. We were always looking in the water for fish and jumpers and which way they were swimming, if they were swimming against the shore or away from it, talking to people on the radio, talking to your tenders. Just really strategic. It's a career. It's not just, a trade. And I didn't realize that. And like I said, he worked so hard, and somehow we scratched away and made a decent season out of it. Whereas other people, I think, would have just, said it's a waste of time. I'm going to sit out this year. But I definitely think it's a way of life. It's, we saw a lot of boats out there who were kids that I went to kindergarten with who are running their own boats now, who's, grew up on their father or mother's fishing boat. We saw a lot of little kids out there. So I think it's definitely something that's passed down. It's a way of life. It's a great lifestyle. You work, you never know how the season's going to be. It can be great, it can be terrible, but there's something so refreshing, I think, about just working so hard and giving it all you can, and working for yourself and being outdoors and being with the wildlife. It's the most beautiful place in the world, I think. And it's flexible, and you work really hard in the summer. It's not to say that you don't have to work in the winter or do other things to support your fishing lifestyle, but it's a lifestyle, and it's not a job, obviously. And it was definitely really hard when I was there, but it's not like waking up and saying, oh gosh, I don't want to go to the office today. You just kind of get it, and you go through the motions, and it gets easier, and it's definitely fun. It's hard work, but it's just as much fun. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and it wasn't the greatest season. But my dad, I have a newfound respect for his fisherman skills, because he just made it so that we plugged away. A lot of boats didn't even come out, and it wasn't really worth their while. But we plugged away and fished every single day and somehow made a season out of it. And a lot of people ask, what makes a good season? What are the factors? And no one really knows, but there are a variety of factors. Some people say it's the water temperature, so depending on when the fish are released out into the ocean. It was an especially cold winter this year, so sometimes the water temperature can cause them to die. Also, when they become fry, so when they hatch out of the eggs, if there isn't a corresponding plankton bloom in the ocean, they may die, because that means that they're not getting food. And also rain is another factor. If there's a lot of rain, which there was this year, it can sometimes wash them out of the gravel beds where they're planted in. And that, just a lot of environmental factors. No one really knows, but it can be a great season one year and a bad season the next. So every year is an adventure, and having gone through that process and experience it and reconnect with that part of Alaska, it's really made me appreciate the piece of fish on my plate in front of me and look at things in a different way. And I hope that you do too next time you go out to eat and enjoy a piece of salmon.